All right. Welcome to Lunch and Learn today. We are looking at ChatGPT and other AI generators this whole semester. We're trying to investigate the use of that AI generator tool, and we're focusing in on ChatGPT because that's the most popular one. But we're trying to decide today, is it a learning tool or is it just a threat to education in general? So we're going to investigate the threat side of it, we'll investigate the tool side of it, so that way when you're making your decisions about it, you have more information at your fingertips. And again, today what we'll be talking about is what is ChatGPT? Where did it come from? So in another Lunch and Learn, gave just a little bit more of that history. This time we'll get a little bit added to it, but if you want to see more of that, you can refer to one of the previous Lunch and Learns. The recordings are up on our CCIT website. We'll also be looking at ChatGPT as a threat and ChatGPT as a tool. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Just a brief reminder or maybe new information about what is ChatGPT. Well, ChatGPT is a chat bot, and it is it has been trained on massive amounts of data. So this chat bot, they used large language learning models, and they really looked at how are there patterns in information, patterns in the language and the prompts that are entered into a tool like ChatGPT, and then what are the patterns in the language that can help answer those questions. They're built with neural networks that are supposed to replicate the way that our neurons fire in our brains. So it's helping to make connections across like and different information to try to gather some new information. But where did it come from? Well, we did have a ChatGPT, and I'm sure there was a ChatGPT 1, but really looking at it, just to let you know what GPT stands for, Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So being able to generate information, it's been already trained, and it kind of transforms that information to provide something for you in a human-like voice. So that helped it become really valuable at ChatGPT 3 for a chatbot. And ChatGPT 3 is the one that you access for free. There's now ChatGPT 4 that's available for a subscription, and it is more powerful than 3. However, I have found that 3 is pretty good for free. It does pretty well. The difference is that if it's really busy, if there are a lot of people in ChatGPT 3, then it'll tell you, oops, sorry, we're busy, you can't get in right now. Whereas ChatGPT 4, you're paying for it, so it's available for you. So those are some big differences, and the difference in the information. So we had the preview that was publicly released in November 2020, but we really started thinking about ChatGPT this past year, trying to, that's when it really skyrocketed in its popularity and in use. It is limited on its information. It only goes up until 2021 for a few reasons, but there are AI generators, and I have heard that that status is going to change so that we'll become live. So meaning that we'll have information up to current information. And other AI generators, for instance, Bing, if you use Bing Edge, and so you have Bing as the AI chatbot there, it is using ChatGPT 4 actually as a basis for it. So it's available up to live information as well. And again, there are other ones out there that are more present in the information they give you than ChatGPT 3. So there are some kind of differences there. I do want to give you an opportunity to chat in the chat or to unmute. What threats do you see in a tool like ChatGPT, or what scares you about it? And again, feel free to unmute or to type in the chat. Oh, excellent. So I see that it's totally new. Haven't really heard much about it yet, huh, Nancy? Okay. I'm glad you're here. He says, expand my brain. Yes, Ned is talking about detection for plagiarism. And that is something that we talked about in the last Lunch and Learn as well, that there are tools to help detect when AI has been used. They're not foolproof, but even the similarity detectors, when they were trying to detect what percentage of similarity there might be with other tools, those weren't necessarily foolproof either. So there's kind of that. Being a teacher, I'm more worrying about if students can think critically and independently. Daniel, that is a great point because unfortunately, and we'll talk about it, if students become reliant on something like ChatGPT, then they might neglect processing information and learning more. Yes, and threat of improper use is a tool. So even though
Uh,
and for cheating, right? Is that what you're talking about, Kathleen?
you know,
Yeah. Emma, are you talking to us? Okay, I'm gonna mute you. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so we have a few ideas, and it seems like what scares us most is really students not using it for good purposes. That they're either going to use it to cheat or to be dishonest, and they might use it for lots of reasons. Maybe they're overwhelmed and they have so many things going on that they think, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and I'll chat GPT it. Um, or they might say, I'll see what I can get away with. Or sometimes students just feel like ChatGPT is better at it than they are. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too. Excellent. All right. So here's some ideas about ChatGPT as a threat in schools. Oh, and I did just see one more thing come in the chat. Lauren had taken a lot of time to type this, so I don't
That's
want to
okay.
forget
I
it.
was really disagreeing with Kathleen. She makes a great point because I see students that they think they can use it to kind of get an edge, but if it's not really doing what they need, then they might fall even further behind. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's helping them to understand that possibility as well, that it could actually hurt their understanding in the long run. Um, so we have ChatGPT. It can be a threat in schools, for instance. We talked about the limited information. If people are using ChatGPT 3 and it has a limit of 2021 for its information, then there may have been some new discoveries in the past couple of years, new ways of thinking about things that they will miss out on as they are generating their ChatGPT 3 things. There is a potential for stilted language as well, because it's trying to create these patterns of language when it gives it to you. But after you've looked at a few enough chat GPT generated things, you start to recognize some language patterns, or at least recognize that this is weird and different. And I was talking to Cassandra earlier today too. I'm teaching a psych course, for instance, and I had mentioned this earlier. I had a couple of students who submitted, they were two discussion boards. Uh, Things that read a little like AI, but you can't really say, oh, this, you cheated or anything like that. And I wasn't really going for that anyway. But there were a couple things that made me suspicious. One was the vocabulary use. And quite honestly, the way that the answer was derived, the structure of it, the fact that it was a different font than any other answer that they had given also. So they copied and pasted it in there is what it looked like. It doesn't mean they did, but it looked like it. And also, I was pointing out to Cassandra this morning that their answers to other classmates, because it was a discussion board, were so different, but they were so good. And so I was a little bit frustrated that they weren't confident enough in their skills and abilities to write their own answer, or at least what I suspected wasn't their own writing. So the interesting part was my discussion board prompt required personal examples, and they hadn't given personal examples. Everything was general. Oh, well, professionals ought to, or people in their personal lives ought to, which doesn't necessarily mean they copied it, but it felt a little bit like that. So I did actually say in my feedback, this reads a little bit like it was generated by artificial intelligence. And I would really appreciate an injection of your voice into what you write because your responses to your classmates are so good that I'd like to see more of that in your answers and the prompt required personal examples anyway. So that's your opportunity to shine with your information, something like that. So hopefully I'm helping them think about what they're doing. And I put an announcement in my class. I told them I'm doing a professional development series this whole semester about ChatGPT and tools like that. And I'm teaching other instructors here at Delaware Tech about it as well. So that way they know it's out there. And then I told them, I said, here's a couple ways that you can use it appropriately, ethically. I used that word. And then I said, and here's a couple of cautions. And we'll talk more about those cautions today too on this list. And here's some things you need to be able to remember that we that you are ultimately responsible for whatever the AI says and you turn in. That you, because what are they going to say when it's wrong? Well, that's what the AI told me. So I, mean, I guess, but anyway, so I just told them if anyone was interested in asking questions about it, it's something that I had a lot of information about. And so I'm hoping that kind of squelches this use a little bit in the class because I put it right out there. We also, as we talked about cheating concerns, Bloom's is a resource. They said that 1 in 5 college students use AI to complete assignments. They don't use that word cheat necessarily, but if the student's using it and merely copying and pasting it into their answer, then yeah, that's crossing the line. Some of the issues are that dependence on ChatGPT though. I mentioned it just a little bit earlier. Maybe students start to feel like, yeah, but ChatGPT can say it so much better than I can. And they become dependent upon it. Or if they have reduced executive functioning, they're not good at time management, things like that. They're constantly crunched for time, that they might become dependent on ChatGPT as a crutch that, okay, I'm just going to type this in here and get it to finish that assignment for me. And that's how it can threaten, as Lauren and Kathleen were saying, that learning as well, that processing of the information, because they're relying on just copying and pasting from someplace else. There's inaccuracy in ChatGPT and other AI generators. They might get the information wrong. And that is something for students to be concerned with. That was what I warned my students about in my announcement. Sometimes it's wrong and you need to make sure that it's not, because it will, if you turn that in, it's going to look like you don't know what you're talking about. So I'm trying to put it, I'm trying to put it in a what's in it for me language, so that it's not just, here's the threat of it. Yes. And as Lauren pointed out, it makes stuff up. And I'll talk about that a little bit more also, but it's the idea is that without personifying it, but I ultimately will give it a personality, right? Make it seem like a person. And it's not. I'm going to underline, it's not a person. It's not someone sitting in a little room answering these questions, but the logarithm wants so badly to answer the question as well as it can that it makes stuff up in order to try to give you a valid answer. And as Lauren pointed out, hallucination is the term that is being used for tools like ChatGPT that make stuff up. They hallucinate and imagine things and put them in there, and they'll give you sources that aren't real. They've made them up. So there's still an onus on students to check these. And I'll spot check resources periodically. One time, students, they cite articles that you need a subscription to access. So I've asked them, oh, do you have a subscription to access this? Because I would really be interested in looking at this resource, and I couldn't access it through the link that you provided, things like that. And copyright, but guess what? It's not copyright the way you think it is. So it's not copyright like they create the ebook and now they go publish it, right? This is the other side of that. So for instance, people put in there, oh, summarize such and such a book for me. So the ChatGPT says, okay, sure, does it. The author of that book said that it's copyright infringement upon their book because it's giving students access to information from their text without their express permission to get it. So there's actually a couple of lawsuits that I don't know the results of them. Sometimes there are lawsuits and nothing happens, right? But I don't know the results of them, but those are the questions that are being raised with the use of a tool like ChatGPT. And those were some of the things I thought were very interesting. So now we talked about some threats. We talked about ones that you mentioned in the chat, and we talked about some that are listed here. Now I want us to switch our lens just a little bit too. What potential benefits can you see from ChatGPT, from using a tool like that? What potential benefits do you see from using it?
I'll unmute. I struggle with the potential benefits because it because I feel like the students, I'm at that age, you know what I mean, where like the kids know more about technology than I do, like I never thought I'd get there, but here we are. And I just feel like I'm not as well versed in it, and like my brain just doesn't understand it as well, even though I'm really, really working hard at that. So I'm wary to say like, so I say all of that in saying, I feel like we need to be super well versed in it, like experts on it, in order to be able to guide the students appropriately in how to use it. You know what I mean? So like I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing brainstorming. Yeah. But then it's like, how do you guide them? You know what I mean? When I'm not really quite sure myself of like what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Sorry, guys.
Well, and in response, Christina, for instance, there's a resource, and I'll grab that for you. Remind me, it was in a former previous resource. It'll be again in the creativity session that we do, but it actually has 100 prompts in it that teachers can use, or instructors can use to try to create different things for their course. So it can help you to start familiarizing yourself with some of the language, the way that it's helpful. I've got a couple prompts for you today, but they are huge. So we'll just look at the way they can be constructed. Because to me, I hadn't thought about entire paragraphs for prompts. So, and I have a couple examples for you today of that too, and some resources so that you can see even more. So maybe that will help feel like you build some familiarity with it. But we'll talk about a little bit more today too, that you'll see that developing that expertise is kind of tough too, because it's a little bit changeable sometimes.
I just feel like they're always one step ahead. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It does start to feel like that, doesn't it? I did see the brainstorming though, as Christina mentioned, that you can use it. You can talk, a student could put in there, wow, I really have to write this paper. I need 3 good ideas of what I could write this paper about. Totally legit use, right? That they can say, I need 3 ideas of how you should construct a sustainable building, or whatever. And then, or 3 good points, something like that. Or outlines. I just need the ideas, and then they can fill in the outlines. Totally legitimate. The problem is when they just copy and paste is when I start to take issue with it. I want them to invest more of themselves into the projects or into the assignments that they're creating. But Lauren points out, for instructors, it can make your repetitive basic tasks more efficient. It can create samples or examples to use in class. We've talked about before in here, for instance, if you need a scenario, you can give it some details about a character and who you want. I'm using that right now with another person. We're creating a course in the Bachelor of Science in Education series, and we're peppering in at the beginning of each module information about a particular child. and then how you can respond to that particular child. And it gives you good ideas, and then we're crafting them and shaping them to fit better into what her vision is for the course. Writing assignments, it can help alleviate blank page stress. Exactly, Kathleen, exactly. Just getting that topic ready, especially, and sometimes even for language learners or for people who might take a little more time processing, they're just really stuck. I see basic templates, rubrics. It can create a rubric for you. And then I just caution you again, as we're telling the students, look at the rubric, make sure it really fits your needs and it fits your cohort of students or your exact project, because the AI can misinterpret what you say as well. So you want to make sure that it's done its job the way that you want it to. Don't just take it as, oh, it's good, it's done. Surveys, comprehension questions. You can give it an article and it will come up with 5 discussion questions, things like that. But read them over, make sure they're right, because it makes stuff up. So make sure. Okay. So there are definitely some of the potential benefits. Let's keep moving on, because we really want to talk about, can ChatGPT be a tool in education? And there are several activities we've talked about in our previous Lunch and Learns. And I have a couple more for you today because I try to give you new ones each time so that you don't feel like it's just a repeat of everything. And there's so much out there, really. But we want to start off with one of the ways that it can be a tool in education is having these conversations with students or with fellow faculty. This comes from Harvard Business Publishing. These are guidelines for proper use. The first thing you want to do is understand the AI. So it's large language models, most of them are LLMs, but they don't understand you and they can make mistakes. So when we're looking at the word understand, that's why it's in quotation marks. It responds to predict patterns, but it doesn't really understand you. And that's why we have to remember it's not a person either. And sometimes it's easy because it responds with like person language, human-like language. So we need to remember, and if we're talking to students about it, remind them too. It's not just a little person sitting in office trying to answer your question. They're not necessarily going to get all the nuances of what you're trying to do as well. There are benefits and challenges. Some of these challenges are lying. All AI models, it's not just ChatGPT, I found out, they all lie to some degree. Now, lying again, I think that puts a value on it, and really it's a large language model. There are no values really, but it makes stuff up. All of them do. So you have to be vigilant in your use to make sure that what it's creating is appropriate. And if we have that conversation with students to let them know, because maybe they don't realize that it makes stuff up, that it hallucinates, then those are some conversations we can have with them as well to make them more vigilant also in what they're in their use and their transition to you showing it in a course. And there can be bias, and it's important to know that there can be bias as well. The bias is dependent upon the database upon which that chat bot has been trained. And there can be bias, for instance, if the database of information was mostly 18 to 27-year-old white males. And then if you were here in the first one, I had typed in, give me a meal plan for 50-year-old woman that is a week-long meal plan, high in protein, low in carbs, and then it generated all this stuff. But if the database it drew from was only 18 to 27-year-old males, then it might make some stuff up. So I have to double check that caloric information. Maybe it's thinking I really need 2,500 calories a day because I'm 18-year-old guy, right? Versus, no, I'm a 50-year-old woman. Even though I'm active, I don't really need that many calories, that kind of thing. And privacy. Many AI models, when you put stuff in there, it uses it for future training. So it's good to know that. You don't want to put personal information in there. No banking information, no. And be careful for your students too. We talked about in a previous Lunch and Learn session that you can teach the AI model to write in your style by uploading or inputting some sample writing. But then the part that scares me about that, until I know more about it, I guess, is just because then now I'm creating this artificial intelligence that turns into like Terminator, if you remember that movie, where it takes over the world and just pretends that it's me, something like that. And again, the privacy, any of your personal information, it might be important to tell students about that too. That if they're putting anything in there, it could be used. It could be seen. Now, there are a couple that don't internalize your personal information, but there are an awful lot of them that do. If we look into the best practices for the use, Harvard Business Publishing also says that individuals are held accountable. This was one of the things I was telling my students. No matter what, you are still responsible for whatever the AI says if that's what you're turning in. And the AI is not a person, and your AI is mercurial. And what I mean by mercurial is it changes. If I put the same prompt in 3 different times, even in the same chat bot, I could get 3 different answers. And across different chat bots, I definitely will. So there will be some similarities, but there will be changes in it as well. You can't replicate the answer again. That's why if your students, if there's any appropriate use for something that was generated and they want to appropriately cite it with APA formatting and it's long enough, and my English people know what long enough is. I don't know, you'd have to tell me if you know that detail. But if it's long enough that it you have to put it in as an appendix, copy and paste it as an appendix because you will not be able to generate it again. And if you want to refer to that, you have to be able to capture it in that moment. Now, ChatGPT will save your chats. I don't know if it saves it forever, but it does save it for a while anyway. So you can copy and paste it then, but you don't want to rely on, it staying there. Any glitches, right? And you are in charge. So it's your prompt that you're writing in there. The answers that you get will depend upon how you're writing the prompt. Guard your personal information. We talked about that. And provide context. The better the prompt, the better the answer. So if you're more detailed in what you type in to request from ChatGPT, you will get better answers from it as well. I'm going to show you a couple of prompts that are just insane. Are you ready to see them? All right, okay, we're going to get to those here. This last part I want to tell you is here is an activity. So the prompt I'm going to show you goes with this activity. So this is a way that students could use ChatGPT. This is a new activity. This comes from Wharton School at Penn. So what you want to do is be able to create a prompt for the AI, and you're going to tell the AI that it's going to serve as a student. Now, this is an activity that sometimes you might use in your classroom where you have one student teach another student a topic, right? The issue with live students teaching live students topics, if student A isn't quite that expert, like Christina was saying, sometimes you feel like when you teach, you got to know a lot, if not everything, right? If that student A is teaching student B and student A has a misconception, they might give that to student B. Student B might internalize that, and then there you go. So this is one way so that when you have students who are teaching another student, you could have the artificial intelligence, the ChatGPT, serve as that student. So then student A doesn't mess up ChatGPT really, and ChatGPT can kind of challenge them on some of it as well. So here's the deal. When you create your prompt, you want to define the role and the goal for AI to follow. You want to give agency to your students though, so they're still in charge. And what you want the AI to do is be able to challenge those students to evaluate answers that the AI gives them, require students to articulate what they're thinking about the answers that the AI gives, and in this way, it increases the cognitive work for the students. So we were concerned that the use of ChatGPT removes that cognitive onus from the students. But if we use it in this way, It is a possible way to increase it. Some considerations, though, is AI might misinterpret the prompt. We already talked about that. It might not quite understand exactly what you want, and it might depend upon when you've given it as much, how much it understands it. If there are any misconceptions, because we learned that AI sometimes hallucinates, then your students could internalize those. But you definitely want to test your prompt. Even though it might get different responses, at least you have an idea, is it pretty good? Test it, a few times. Yeah, for the most part, it's giving me the right thing. Yeah, I'm good. So here's an example of the prompt. All right, take a deep breath before I show you though, because this is just full. All right, see this big paragraph? This is what's typed in. And note, this approach is very, very different from just saying, give me feedback about my essay. If students put their essay in there and said, now give me feedback about it. Or if the student said, explain a topic to me like I'm 10 years old. This is very, very different from that. Okay, so you're a student who has studied a topic, interacting with a student. This is what you're telling ChatGPT to do. Remember, we're developing its role and its goal. Think step by step and reflect on each step before you make a decision. And then you're giving agency to the students. Do not make choices for the teacher. Do not pick the topics. Always wait for the teacher. You only play the role of student. The goal of the exercise, and then they have a typo in here, because look at this. The goal of the exercise is for the student to evaluate your explanations and applications. That should say teacher, because we want to be consistent in our language, right? Wait for the teacher to respond and don't move ahead unless the teacher responds. Introduce yourself as a student who's happy to share what you know about a topic of the teacher's choosing. So ask the teacher what they would like you to explain and how they would like you to apply that topic. For instance, you can suggest that you demonstrate your knowledge of the concept by writing a scene from a TV show of their choice, writing a poem about the topic, or writing a short story about the topic, and then wait for a response. Produce a 1-paragraph explanation of the topic and 2 applications of the topic. Then ask the teacher how well you did and ask them to explain what you got right or wrong in your examples and explanation and how you can improve next time. Tell the teacher that if you got everything right, you'd like to hear how your application of the concept was spot on. Wrap up the conversation by thanking the teacher. All right. Then ChatGPT says, as a student, hello, I'm a student who has studied a wide range of topics. I'd be happy to share what I know about any topic of your choosing. Please let me know which topic you'd like me to explain. Additionally, would you like me to demonstrate my understanding of the concept by writing a scene from a TV show of your choice, or crafting a poem about the topic, and if you want to see the whole thing, I will pop that into the chat for you. And what it does is this is an example that you can see. I took a little screenshot of it so that you can see what it would look like. They did do this in ChatGPT 4, but I don't think that really matters. Excellent. And then Ada has put in a resource into the chat as well that you might find interesting with AL 101 for teachers. Tell us a little bit more about that, Ada. What's the purpose of the link?
Well, I just got it yesterday from Dr. Fred. I had a class with him, and he was talking about AL, and he shared us to explore that as we learn about it. So I thought it made it just,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's a resource to explore, to find out more about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Can you see students teaching a topic to AI in your class? Do you have thoughts about what you just saw? How does it make you feel? I don't know. I'm trying to exercise wait time. See, it paid off. It feels overwhelming, but it might be a component in courses. And Jennifer had asked a question earlier if these kinds of information would end up in SSC 100. Jennifer, I don't know the answer to that question. but that might be something, because that's a course that you deal with, that you could pose to the chair, to the department, which I know it's kind of different for SSC. There's like a million people who teach it, but that might be something to consider, that we could begin crafting. Maybe we need the college policy to help expand that. I'm not sure. We'd have to have that discussion. Can you use AI to determine if AI was used? And I like that Lauren is answering it. Yes, theoretically, yes, but it is inconsistent because there isn't really a guarantee. When you use Turnitin has the AI detector on it right now, but it is not foolproof. It recognizes ChatGPT with pretty good accuracy. But if it was generated anyplace else, it doesn't do as well. So there are those things also. Excellent. And Kathleen thought, oh, maybe I could see trying to use this. Maybe I'll have to think about it a little bit more. Yeah, oh yes, students could be the teacher in a peer review composition as well, and something like that. Fabulous. Okay. And again, we talked about it once in a previous Lunch and Learn. Sometimes students, if they know that it is something from AI, they can be more critical than they would be about their classmates, because they feel bad saying mean things. Or even if it's something that the teacher wrote, the instructor wrote, that they might feel bad criticizing it. Whereas if it's a computer, they just go all over, and, tear it apart. That has been the experience for some students anyway. So that's something to consider as well. All right, ready for another example? This one is using AI for role playing. So it can help you focus on specific concepts. It can help the student be pushed towards problem solving just a little more. So these are ways that maybe actually can support that cognitive engagement, and can even provide some feedback. So here we go. I'm going to show you the sample prompt, and here is the resource for it. There's actually 7 different approaches in this resource that I'm giving you. I'm just focusing on one of them for this. But here it is. Take a deep breath before you look at it, because again, this one's involved. So what you would have your students, this one, what this is what would we call it? A frame, right? A prompt frame, because do you see there are brackets in there? So someone has to fill in the brackets. Now you could either fill it in for your students, or you could let your students do it. I want to practice my knowledge of concept, photosynthesis. You'll play the role in a specific situation, a daisy in a garden. I'll play the sunshine. So that what role they're taking, whatever. The goal is to practice photosynthesis on a cloudy day. I don't know, I'm making this stuff up, so but create a scenario in which I can practice applying my skill in a situation. So where I can practice my skill of knowing how photosynthesis works on a cloudy day when you don't have direct sunlight or whatever. I should have to encounter specific problems. You're helping students fill in those brackets, or you're letting them fill them in. It depends on your purpose for this. Give me dilemmas or problems. After 4 interactions, set up a consequential choice for me to make. There's that problem solving. And then wrap it up by telling me how I performed and what I can do better next time. Do not play my role. Only play the daisy. Wait for me to respond. I don't know. You can come up with better examples, but that was just one for fun, because I'm missing the flowers. But this is a prompt that could set up that role-playing situation, so that now they can do it. I could see an application for this myself in nursing, right? So it's maybe some role-playing setup that no one's going to be injured or die because they're doing it with ChatGPT, things like that. Maybe as a teacher with a student. The other thing that you can do if you want to help them engage in role playing is to require that reflection. Share your complete interactions with the AI. So this is what you're telling the students to do, and to write a paragraph that tells you what they learned from the tool. You can give them some sample questions like, how well did it work? Were you surprised? Did it give you helpful advice? So that you can require your students to process this interaction. And again, get deeper into it. And if you're familiar with the higher order thinking skills, right, with HOTS, when you're getting your students to synthesize information or to evaluate information, was the advice helpful? Then you are getting them to think more deeply about something. All right, so it's evaluation time. Can you see using role playing with AI in your class? I mentioned nursing, that I thought it might work in nursing or in an education class. I wonder if it couldn't work in automotive, something like that too.
So are we,
Yeah,
if I may, I'm just trying
yes.
to make sure I'm thinking. We're gonna utilize the AI in the class if I was an instructor, but is this to give mm, the AI more human characteristics, traits that we can relate to it, or it can
Are
give
you
us
talking about the purpose, Cassandra, for it?
yes.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah. The purpose would be not really to humanize the AI so much,
Okay.
but to give your students the opportunity to interact with
With
information on a topic with this role. So in your classrooms, people might use role playing anyway. That they would hand Cassandra and Christina two roles that they would play, and you're Cassandra, you're the counselor, and Christina's coming in with a certain problem that she's looking for answers from you or advice from you,
oh, okay, okay,
counseling from you.
okay,
So now you are challenged to come up with things that can help Christina as she presents information from you from her role.
okay.
Sometimes, I mean, it is valuable to have that role playing. And in this way, you could have AI assume that role who's coming into you and you're the counselor. Any advice that you give then doesn't really hurt the AI because it's not a human. It's
Mm,
not another person. So you have the opportunity to kind of explore some thoughts,
mm,
see what responses it could generate,
okay.
and then in that big long prompt, it told the AI to evaluate the responses it got and to give some feedback. What do you think were good
Mm,
responses and what do you think I need to improve? Right? And it can do that without a possibility of an emotionally charged interaction. Things like that. So in English class, I don't know. You're gonna have them pretend to be, the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood. I don't know. But there might be potential because I know that there are places that, for instance, in English class, you might have role playing, or in math class, you might have role plays that you have the students assume different things in conversations. And this would just be another application that you could try it, especially with some of those emotionally charged topics.
okay. Thank you.
No problem. Oh, a class demo or video. Yes, so Kathleen is suggesting you could show them ChatGPT and do it as a class together and see how ChatGPT responds to you and kind of be able to talk about it. Am I capturing your thoughts, Kathleen? Yup. She said yup. All right, excellent. All right. Oh, and I like Lauren has added in there that it's the part about feedback that's key. Having the AI point out those strengths and weaknesses to help students think about how they might revise their approach, revise their understanding, deepen their understanding. And then I like that she pointed out, though, you'd still take a grain of salt with it because, they can make some stuff up. So it gives you feedback upon which you are evaluating the feedback to determine the validity of it. Excellent. And to help them see, Kathleen is saying, let's see what a live prompt returns so that we can evaluate that and have that conversation. Love it. All right. I want to Also, and I did this in the last one, I want to capture any thoughts or questions that you want to capture. I have a couple more of these left in the series, and I want to make sure that I'm talking about the things that you want. So for instance, it was brought up, being able to talk to students more about ethical use and how do we teach them that they can use this appropriately. That's why I keep giving you examples of different activities that I'm finding that can be used with students. This one, I was really pleased because it happened that people said, yeah, the cognitive onus is off the kids. And then I happen to have some activities queued up that maybe strengthen that cognitive investment from the students. So that really worked well. But I want to make sure that these matter for you and that they mean something for you. So you can type it in the prompt or you can email me to let me know if there's anything else that you can think that you'd like us to be able to. We're going to talk about creativity. And we're going to talk about digital citizenship. If there's other things that you think need to be part of that or questions you have about either one of those, type them in the chat, unmute, or email them to me so that way I can make sure that we talk about them for future ones. Does AI access library databases? Some does. I don't know which ones, but I could try to find out. That would kind of speak to that possibility of that copyright thing, right? Kathy, when there was that complaint, if it's digging into the library. One of the reasons that ChatGPT was limited to 2021 was because it was giving away trade secrets that it went into websites. And I don't know, like the secret ingredients in like a secret sauce from a restaurant or something like that. It would go in and say, oh, sure, and go get it and give it. So they had to put limitations on it. But I think they're fixing some of that is why now they're opening it, or they figure we don't care. I'm not sure which. All right, anything else? All right, again, if you think of something, please let me know because I want these to be valuable for you. I'm hoping that you're finding value in these sessions. And October 25th, so this is not, so this is, yeah, this is 2 weeks, 2 weeks. October 25th, we explore how AI can enhance your creativity. So if you have thoughts about that, again, let me know. But that is going to wrap it up for us today. And I'm so glad you came today. Thank you so much for being here.